Hey, before we get started today, I'd like to ask you guys a favor if I could. I'd like to take a small video of anyone that's dressed Piccolo. Anyone that's dressed from any show or movie that I've done, and then I'd like to string those together and put it on my Facebook. But I'd like to give them a round of applause at the end of the little video, which is where you guys come in, if it's okay. If I could film you guys screaming your lungs out, like your team won the thing.
Sports ball? Sports
yeah,
ball.
The trophy of some kind.
Reindeer games. Wow. Okay. So, is that okay?
Yeah.
Awesome. And I see Harry's here, Piccolo's here. So if you guys come by my table, I would love to just film you quickly, say your name and your character name. It's fairly painless.
So I'd like to say, you guys can ask me anything that you want. If you want to try to embarrass me, like, bring it. I'm absolutely shameless, so I've discovered that. Many people have tried, and it hasn't worked so far. But Steve and I know has probably got something good, so we'll start with you.
Okay. Which one do you want? Do you want a music question or a dressing question?
Bring it.
Okay. Music-wise, what has been the strangest inspiration for one of your songs?
Most of my songs would I mess up with whatever lady love. Well, okay, there's either If She Hurt Me, and then there's the revenge songs, which, you know, I'm married now, so that those are kind of starting to peter out. And then there's the I'm so sorry I was a jerk, honey, kind of stuff. I guess the strange would just be Katie, which is an earlier song. We were doing our second tour as a band, and I think we were in Germany, and I was noticing that the audience wanted to exalt. Our first album was very complex, and it was mostly we're in pain kind of songs, and the audience was loving it, but they just wanted to jump. And I thought, you know, we need a nice, clean love song with a simple chord progression, just to let people kind of let it out. And I went home and I wrote a love song to a woman that worked on Buffy from the character of my 7-year-old son. So it's, Katie, come out and play. I've got a present for you today. It's got your name on it. I hope I spelled it right. Oh, yeah. And what you say?
Okay, how would Toot Toot describe the best pizza in the world?
The best pizza for a guy who doesn't eat any carbohydrate anymore.
No, I mean Toot Toot from Dresser.
Oh, any pizza you got, Lord. Any pizza at all.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Chicago deep dish, dude.
Yeah.
Of course.
All right, thank you.
Yeah. Okay.
Who's next?
Boring question. What has been the biggest differences with filming a streaming show on Hulu versus a show for like the CW or BBC America?
Yeah, I think the biggest difference for Runaways, which is the one that's streaming now, is that we got to complete the first season before anyone saw it. And the weird thing about actors is we will pick ourselves apart. When we see ourselves on camera, it's a little bit of a nightmare. We always look, the lighting is always bad, the acting is always bad, because the thing is, we can see the strings on the puppet. Like, we don't fool ourselves. It looks artificial to us because we were the ones who did it, so there's no illusion for us, and it always looks like, oh God, it's horrible. And, or God help us if the other thing happens and it's like the audience is telling you that you're amazing, then your ego can get kind of inflated, and that causes a whole myriad of problems. And I was talking with Greg Sulkin, who plays my son on the show, and he's an amazing dude. He brings it. He's unfairly beautiful, but he's also like a down-to-earth, cool dude. And he was like, I can't wait for the show to come out. I can't wait to see what the audience. I was like, you know, Greg, we may look back on the first season as the golden season when it was pure, before we were picking ourselves apart and or thinking that we were the best thing since sliced bread, you know. So the show's been well received, and I'll see what happens on season 2. Like, is anyone's ego going to expand? I don't know, man. But everyone seemed like their feet were pretty well on the ground. I think for me that was basically the only difference. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Hi, so my question is, could you maybe speak a little bit to your experience on maybe the highs and lows of belonging to kind of a pop culture institution? Like
What, there's lows?
I don't know, are there?
Wow, that's kind of a stretch, actually. Well, I'll say this. I was fortunate right out of high school to get famous for 2 weeks. I did. Does anybody know the International Thespian Society? Okay. It's the high school drama nerd club. Sorry, guys, but it is.
Yeah.
And I was a member of this organization. Oh, very good. And so every 2 years they do the international conference. Back when I was in high school, it was at Muncie, Indiana, at Ball State University. And Ball State gets taken over by drama students. There's like 2,000 of us. And for every time they do that, they do a play that they cast from the whole nation, and they show it only once in front of the whole thing. And that year it was Godspell, and I was cast as Jesus. And we were super famous. Like, within the confines of Ball State University, we were all Justin Bieber, you know? and like, people would break into our room and steal our stuff. We had to be, you know, ferried around. We'd be mobbed wherever we were. And I remember thinking, wow, I'm so glad that this is happening now, because I don't like this. Like, this is not probably where I want to try to go with my career of acting. Like, so now I know I'm not going to Hollywood. I'm going to stay in theater where everything's sane. And I had many great years where the only thing that really happens when you're in theater is you'll be walking your dog and someone will say, "Excuse me, Mr. Marsters, I saw you in Macbeth yesterday." "Very good, sir." "Oh, thank you." And that's as much heat as you get. Then I had a son, and I realized that my son did not decide to be poor, that I was happy being a poor artist, and it was great, frankly. I didn't need money, it was so fun. But I decided to go to Hollywood and try to make some money. And I thought, I'm just going to do guest star roles, try to bank a good amount of money, pay for health care for my kid, and be gone. And then I met Joss Whedon. And it just went off the rails. And so for those years, it was weird. It was like, when you have really bleached blonde hair and you see that guy on the street, the immediate answer is, who's the freak, right? And then if you look at me long enough, like, oh, that freak. And then it got to the point where if I stopped moving outside, I had about 15 seconds before a crowd would form. So there was this ticking clock all the time. And that kind of freaked me out, frankly. And I kind of hid from fame for a long time until I met Roger Daltrey, who was the lead singer for The Who, and who is about as famous as you can be. And we did a TV movie together, and he taught me how to be famous. And we would be in between takes, and he said that he used to be a rock star, but now he's a worm farmer. And he would go on and on about silkworms. That was his passion. And that's all he really wanted to talk about. And but people would interrupt us if we were on the street, if we were on location. People would constantly interrupt and say, "Roger Daltrey, can I have a picture?" And he just had included it in the rhythm of his life. And he would very graciously turn and shake the person's hand and be very friendly, take the picture, and then he would have a very kind of subtle, gracious way to say, now that's over, and thank you, and he would turn back to what he was really wanting to talk about was worms. And he told me, he said, James, this is not going to go away. You can run from it, you can embrace it, which is probably more dangerous, or you can just accept the fact that you're very lucky and this is part of your life, and just, that's what it is. And so then I kind of got a better rhythm to it. That was probably the only low, which is probably not that low. And the high was just working on a show that was touching the nerve of the world, and frankly was being worked on by some of the best writers I've ever worked with. And we're churning out stuff that was so vulnerable and so dangerous and so difficult to actually act. Like that writing will take a piece out of you. You know, if you do it with all your heart, it sent me into therapy. You know, and so that was just amazing. Because as an actor, you want to be outside your comfort zone. You don't want to just do what's safe all the time. And so it was challenging to the nth degree. Yeah. Yeah.
Hello. So I love your interpretation of Brainiac on Smallville, and I was just wondering how you connected to that character, and if you had any thoughts on why they don't seem to be able to get it going on the big screen with that character.
I read the comics in the 70s, and Brainiac was a really freaky character in the comic books because you knew he was a robot, but he was sadistic, and he was always like, kind of smiling, and he freaked me out as a kid. And then, and I got the role, and I was like, okay, I'm going to play a robot. How do I do that? I'm gonna play like that, and I started, thinking about the robots that I've enjoyed, and I thought about like Data on Star Trek was a cool robot, Metropolis, and I'm going through all these robots, and I finally realized the closest approximation would be like Blade Runner, where you have these robots that you can't tell the difference between, because he's a Kryptonian robot, and so you're not going to be, he's so sophisticated, you're not going to be able to tell him from a human being. So I was like, oh, well then just don't play a robot, and you're, okay, fine. And then, Smallville is really, it's so genius. It's about Superman before he's Superman. Because the problem with Superman is how do you get that character, how do you get an invulnerable character into an adventure if you can't hurt him? And the creators of Smallville realized that if you had that character as a teenager, he would in fact be vulnerable to everything that a teenager is vulnerable to, which is basically everything. And so he's vulnerable to his parents, he's vulnerable to his girlfriend, to his self-image, to his sexuality, to all of the things that we have to face as a teenager. And I think that's why the show was able to run 10 years. But he's not Superman, so you can't have the fully fledged Brainiac with spaceship, going to vaporize Earth. That's not what it does. So you want to bring it down to Earth. And so I had to kind of let go of my preconceptions of Brainiac. And just play him as a very subtle character that could fool Clark Kent into thinking that we're friends. And that was delicious because they told me what was happening later in the season because my character already knew what he was going to do to Clark. But Tom Welling, who played Superman, he was very smart as a human being, and he told him, don't tell me what's happening later on. If my character doesn't know it's about to happen, I don't want to know. So he thought we were going to be friends. And it was great. Like, we're staring at the moon together, and I'm like, oh, Clark, it's important to forgive yourself. Love is the most important thing in the universe. And I'm thinking, I'm going to kill you, kid. And he's buying it. He's like, really, on a human level, he believes me. Yeah, so I tried to sneak in the maniacal, sadistic smile one time. I was throttling him in the Fortress of Solitude, and I was like, you got to put it right here. So but that was about it. Otherwise, it's not really the same Brainiac, nor should it have been.
Well, thank you.
You're welcome.
Harry?
I had a two-part question, actually. Your work on the Dresden Files is fantastic. The audiobooks is just phenomenal. I just want to know how you were able to come up with so many different characters, like so many different voices. Bob is different from Toot Toot. Murphy's different from Molly. Like everything is just, the subtlety is fantastic. I don't know if you had how you were able to come up with so many different voices.
Yeah, it gets to be kind of a problem because at this point there's like 350 throughout all these 22 books, and this character come back and be like, James, do you remember how to do this character? I'm like, no. But what they've done is they've saved sound files. So if like some of these characters were in book 3 and then they are not in any of them and they come back later on. On a technical level, Jim writes right in my wheelhouse, which is that if there is a God, my phone is burning up my pocket here. It's on. If there's an accent, it's usually Western European. Like I'm good at white people voices, right? Like that I always say, like if you would cast me, I could probably do that accent. But I don't do really Chinese or I don't do like I don't know. I do white guy stuff because that's where you make your money usually. So there, you have that range of accents, and then there's the kind of person the person is inside, and that's really just kind of a instinctual thing. And then the important thing is just not to overthink it. If you just get the accent and the age right, and then let the language take you, and let the language inspire you, and frankly, let the language define the character, because people are defined more by what they say than how they say it, actually. So if you just deliver the lines cleanly, the author will do a lot of that work for you. And you just have to not lie. And that's basically it. Yeah.
And have you done anything recently, like peace talks or anything like that?
I just finished doing Briefcases, which is the short stories for Dresden. I just finished those on Wednesday, actually. Yeah. And the last day I got to do Mouse, right? He narrates an entire short story.
That's awesome.
And I was like, so for those of you who don't know, Mouse has been in all the books. He's Harry's dog. He is a huge dog. He's a foo dog, so he's an ancient temple guardian. But he's very friendly, but he's very dangerous. And and I'm like, what kind of voice am I going to do for Mouse? And then it came to me like, you've got to do, from something like Asian voice, but he's a dog, so it's okay. You just pet me, I'm very happy, okay. And it was like, I will miss Mouse like the most. He became my favorite character, and I don't think I'll do any more Mouse voice except woof for the rest of what I do, but I got that, so.
Thank you.
One moment.
Yes.
What as a kid inspired you to do acting?
Good question. What inspired me to be an actor? There's a dude, Joseph Campbell, who's a kind of a philosopher writer of the last century, and he has a quote which is "Follow your bliss." Kind of like, if it's fun, keep doing it. And I got into a play in 4th grade, and it was Winnie the Pooh, and I played Eeyore, and it was really fun, and I didn't think much about that. But when it came time after 6th grade, there was a theater company that was doing summer plays, and they were doing 2 musicals, and I got cast in those. And I remember a moment where I was singing a song, and I was singing it to the audience, where you admit that you're looking at the audience. You don't have to pretend that they're not there. And I remember thinking, this is my home. Like, I'm really strangely comfortable with people staring at me. And I think that if you're good at something, you kind of get a positive reaction fairly quickly from the people around you. And when I got that, I just kind of followed it. And I never stopped following it. And that was basically it. I think the audience inspired me to be an actor, really. Good question. Right on. What's up?
Now, the 50-year-old's going to ask you a comic book question. Okay, I got to say this. First of all, Buffy was amazing. Any show that the writers are and the producers are above what I'm there because I know it's automatically a quality show. It is what it is.
Every show that the writers and producers what? Oh,
That
those
they're
those
on,
people
follow
are, yeah.
it, follow the paper trail.
Yeah.
That being said, I've been following Buffy with the comics because it's an amazing story. It is what it is. And spoiler alert, you guys, Buffy, and you are in a good place. So, and it's a normal relationship. It's not twisted or I hate you or I hate myself. I hate you for hating myself, whatever. But how do you picture you two panning out?
Buffy and Spike?
Yeah.
I think we pan out very well.
So it ends well then?
I think so. I mean, not without trouble. This is the thing, like, I used to really anger fans talking about Buffy and Spike while we were filming because I kept saying, guys, Spike is the wrong boyfriend. Yeah. We know this, right? And they would all be like, I'm like, he's a killer.
He's a nice killer.
Kill people.
I know, it's twisted.
You guys frustrated my boss so much. He was so trying to convince you to stop thinking that.
Angel's the wrong one. It is what it is.
The thing is that once Spike got a soul, there was a potential future for Buffy and Spike. At the end of the series, there's a great line. It's one of my favorite where she says, I love you. And he says, no, you don't, but thanks for saying so. And I think that's his redemption because at that point, you realize that Spike understands that he's not good enough for her yet. Right? He just got his soul, but now he's got a lot of growing up to do. And once he does that, he'll be ready for her, but not until then.
Oh, wow.
And that's how I think of it. And so I think that if you read the comics, Spike has figured out what to do with this new soul of his.
Oh, it's
And he's grown as a person, and at some point he'll be a good enough man to be with Buffy. And so I think the ultimate, because she can't be with Angel, haha. So of course it's going to be Spike. So yeah, I think that the future's bright for them. But like any married couple, or it's going to be hills and valleys.
Yeah, whatever.
Yeah.
It's a comic. They'll make it nice.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You got it. Hey, Spike.
How you doing?
I'm doing very well. I'm a bit scared of you.
Don't see why. I wanted to ask you this at the table, but what was your favorite Buffy and or Angel episode?
Wow. I think my favorite Angel episode was the puppet episode.
Thank you. Now I'm going to hear you're a bloody puppet for the rest of the day in
You're
my
a
head.
bloody puppet, man. Yeah, that was written by Ben England, who wrote a half-hour animated show called The Tick. Which, bow down. It's about mediocre superheroes, and it's just awesome. And I remember I was waiting for that script because, Ben England was writing it, and I was a fan of The Tick. The script comes out, and Spike's in one scene. I'm like, God! And I was like, Ben, I can be funny, And he goes, James, I've designed this for you to steal the show. Just enjoy the week off, come in, and everything's going to be fine. So it was like really low effort, high reward kind of situation. Yeah. And also the episode itself was just so amazing. So as an audience member, that was, I think, the high point. And it just shows when you're producing and you're willing to risk like that, the payoffs are amazing. And I don't know how many shows would dare do that. For Buffy, so many. I think The Body was a high point. I think that it was, that was an episode that was stripped of all humor, that was stripped of all vampires or fights, special effects, or all of the flash that you usually have on the show, and it just was reduced to a drama and watching a teenage girl watch her mother pass. And I think that it proved that the show was strong enough, the characters were strong enough that was one of the best episodes. I think the first episode that I was in will always be a favorite because I wasn't poor anymore. I was really thought I'm going to be able to pay for healthcare and clothes for my son. So that was huge. And of course the musical. That was a high point. And again, a big risk for the show. We all thought that Joss was flushing the show down a toilet. We were like, don't do it, Joss. It's a good show. And he's like, guys, it's going to be okay. Yeah, so I think that was.
Before you go, can I ask you for one favor?
What's up?
I have a friend who's filming this. In your best Spike voice, can you tell me to sod off? Or
Look,
say
I
something.
don't do the accent anymore. Sod off.
Thank
I've
you.
moved on with my life. I've only do that if you pay me anyway.
Yes. Recently, one of your WB cohorts came out and said she wasn't too happy with a reboot of her show. With Buffy being so iconic, how would you feel if they started a new Buffy?
Okay, back up. What show was rebooted and who said that?
They're rebooting Charmed, and it was one of your attendees here, Holly Marie Combs.
Oh, they're rebooting. Okay, well.
So she was not too happy that they are rebooting it, and is very vocal about that.
Okay. Who's on Charm? Huh? Oh.
Listen, Milano.
Okay.
It's like, yeah, I don't care.
No, she's nice. She's a nice person. It's okay. Yeah. She can feel that way. Look, if Joss Whedon is doing it, it's going to be great.
Okay.
And if he's not doing it, it's going to be horrible. It's going to be like the movie. Joss wrote the movie,
Right.
but he didn't direct it and produce it, and it was terrible. I'm sorry if anyone.
That's true.
It wasn't as good as Buffy the Vampire.
No, definitely not.
I mean, compared to what it should have been. Like, the thing is, Joss's writing, you have to, for the humor to really take off, you have to play it straight. You can't send it up or be arch about it or overact. You've got to really be low and believable. And then it's hilarious. But they didn't understand that, so they kind of sent it up for the movie, and it's half as funny as it could have been. Like, I'm looking at Rutger Hauer going, oh, dude, no. Don't go like that. Like, no. But anyway, so if something happens with Buffy and Joss is not a part of it and he doesn't even write it, holy God. You know? So, yeah. So, if Joss wants to do it, as long as he's doing it, it'll be great.
Cool.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Hey.
What, like, out of TV shows or movies, was your favorite to film and why?
I've been so lucky. I've had so many good experiences. What's my favorite? I can't pick a favorite. I already talked about Buffy being really challenging and rewarding as an artist. Not necessarily being painless, but being really happy that I went through all of that. I remember I'm a science buff. So I did a movie about the Apollo 11 moon landing, and I got to play Buzz Aldrin, and he's like one of my personal heroes. So that was amazing. The reason that they did this TV movie was that NASA has always complained that whenever Hollywood does NASA, it looks like Star Trek because the capsule is huge. And because the thing is, they had to get a camera into the capsule to film the astronauts in the capsule, so they had to expand the capsule. And it always looked like just a comforting, oh, let's go play pool in the back, guys. When in fact, the mission was very cramped and uncomfortable, and the people in the mission had to really suck it up to get to the moon. And it was a scary, dangerous deal. And I remember the producer just going, the whole point of this is that it's going to be very uncomfortable. It's going to be scary, and it's not going to feel good. Get ready. But it turned out really well. I had an amazing time on Supernatural. That was one of the happiest sets I've ever been on. Jared and Jensen are uncorrupted by fame. They're just, because fame is like radioactivity. Like the longer you're exposed to it, the worse it gets. The younger you are when you're exposed to it, the worse it is. But those two guys, they got lead shield just right off them. And they're just completely grounded, and consequently, it's one of the happiest sets I've ever been on. I'm having a blast on Runaways. Just amazing. Everybody's super nice, and it films 15 minutes before my front door. So that's really good. I could go on and on. I can't pick a favorite. I'm that nerd on the set who's like, guys, we get to act today. Isn't it going to be great? I'm that guy.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Hi.
Hey, bud.
So when you're playing a character like Spike for hours and hours a day for a number of years, do you ever find, or did you ever find that aspects of that character started to come into your daily life? Did you change as a person from playing Spike for all those hours?
I mean, to tell you the truth, Spike is me. I mean, a lot of Spike is the parts that I try not to inflict on people. You know, but that is all real. I mean, I think that's kind of why I love acting, and I don't think that acting is about lying to the audience. I think acting is actually being honest in front of the audience. And one of the first things I had to get honest about was that it might be fun killing people. And I did research, and I found that that's something that soldiers have to deal with, is there's a very primal, natural, animal reaction to killing someone, which is, I'm still alive and you're not. And if there is an adrenaline rush and a dopamine dump in your system, and it's very exhilarating, actually. And then they have to live with the guilt of feeling that way. And they don't realize that that's the natural reaction. That's one of the things they don't talk about to us civilians. So I had to kind of get comfortable with it, you know. But so yeah, over the years I got more and more isolated, and I got more and more lonely as I did that character. And by the end I was very, very, very isolated, and I was very, very lonely. Luckily, my brother donated his daughter to my life because he couldn't quite do the parenting, and so I got a child dumped on me, and I got not lonely really quick. and doing that kind of pulled me out of that experience, and here I am.
Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome.
Hey. So I'm an actor too.
Right
I
on.
go to school here in Ohio for theater, and I really like what you were saying about acting is just being truthful.
Yeah.
I have a lot of professors that always say acting is living truthfully in made-up circumstances.
Yeah.
But I go for theater, and we don't have a lot of film stuff. Do you have any advice for differences between film and theater and things like that?
Good, yeah. Film is nothing like theater at all. Like, there's a huge toolbox that you develop for theater. Because, you know this, but in theater, there's no editor. You are the editor. You're the storyteller. And, like, actors, when you're watching a play, it's like a 3-hour magic or a 2-hour magic trick. And you're being manipulated the entire time. Like, the entire cast is in on the joke of where are the audience's eyes supposed to be at any given time. And they will force your eye to whatever character is supposed to be paid attention to, or whatever doorway you're supposed to be looking at. And they're all working together to do it. And they've been rehearsing for a month to get this right. You have to paint the night. If you're doing a night scene, it's got to sound like the night, and the voice changes to the vowels become longer, and there's just a million tricks to stage acting. Film acting is about dumping all of that. And I don't know. Film acting technically is very simple, but it is emotionally very, very demanding. It makes you be really brave. It's not that you have the illusion that this is happening for the first time. It's actually about tricking yourself into having something actually happen. And the camera will document a really actually true event. So for me, it's about learning my lines so well that I can't say them wrong, and then just see what happens. And maybe someone's going to make me mad. Like, how dare you? And just that little tiny reaction will make it in the cut, and it'll be truthful. But the biggest thing is just don't give the lie. The story has its own weight, and it has its own excitement, but if you start acting and start pulling all those tricks, you give the lie to the whole thing and it falls apart. So the biggest thing as a film actor is you just don't blow the illusion. Just be very simple and normal, and you'll be amazed. If you really watch really good actors, most of the scenes they're doing, they do nothing. They're just walking to the grocery store, whatever. That's all they do. Whereas me from stage wants to go. All that stuff, And then every once in a while, there'll be a scene where they unleash, But most of those shots, most of their day is composed of just being very, very boring, actually. Yeah. So dare to be boring, but be honest. And notice that every human being is beautiful enough and interesting enough to be stared at for long periods of time. Every one of us. And the weird thing about actors is we cover up our most interesting and beautiful sides by trying to be cool. And so just let them stare at you. They're there to stare at you. They're not there to expecting, this is true for stage too, they're not expecting you to be cooler than them or more interesting than them or smarter than them or more powerful than them. They're just paying for the right to stare. Because in real life, if we stare at each other, we'll get in a fight. So it's an amazingly generous thing that an actor will allow people to stare at them and study them and notice the small things. It is very rare to have a person that's willing to undergo that and not quail. So in that sacred moment when you're allowing people to do that, don't lie to them.
That's it.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, you're welcome. Wow, we're very serious today. I'm being wise. Save me. What is an Amber Alert? Oh, an Amber Alert. Oh. That was a tornado, but it's worse, actually. Yeah. Oh, no.
Okay. My question is, if you were walking in an alley and you ran into Spike, would you be able to convince him not to kill you? And if so, how?
William, you're my younger brother. Wow, now which Spike is it? Is this like season 2 Spike? Man, if it's season 2 Spike, there's nothing to do. It depends. Yeah, oh, how would I convince Spike not to kill me? I would tell him where the good food is. That would be the only way. I mean, it depends. Like, if you really run into the original first, season 2 Spike, that would be the only way to live, I think. Or just pray that he's not hungry. Just. Good question. What's up?
Okay, so spinning off of that person's reboot question, if they did reboot Buffy, who would you want to play Spike and why?
Good. I would want them to find a unknown theater actor who gave a darn about punk rock. Or any hard form of rock and roll that was just deeply rebellious. Someone like that. Someone who was real hungry and maybe thought maybe they were better than other people at acting at the beginning anyway. When I auditioned for Buffy, so embarrassing. I had just come off of Macbeth in Seattle that was like really successful, and I played Macbeth, right? And so I came to Hollywood like, hello, you toadstools. I'm a Shakespearean actor. And so in the audition room, I was facing a wall, just being, tomorrow and tomorrow and tomorrow creeps in this petty pace from day to the last syllable of recorded time. Thinking that I was making everyone know that I was the best actor in the room, and thinking that I was playing a mind trick on them and that they would lose their confidence, right? Not realizing that they don't care about Shakespeare in Hollywood. They don't care about stage acting in Hollywood because they know it's a completely different thing, and I just looked psychotic. So it didn't work on them, but it worked for me. I was very confident going into the room, and Spike has that kind of confidence like I am. Boom, baby. Which I've probably lost in the wisdom of old age. So yeah, I would think an unknown though. I would hope an unknown.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, man.
Hello. Okay. Shit. I forgot what I was gonna say. What was your favorite part of the experience of playing on Torchwood?
Kissing John Barrowman. I wanted to be in half the households of America when they saw that. No, that first day was awesome because we kissed each other and then we did stunts all day long. And I love stunt day. I like doing stunts. And John and I both come from theater where you don't get a stunt man. And it's kind of a point of pride that we'll do these stunts, thank you very much. Stunt guys, have lunch. And John and I conspired to try to not let the stunt guys in for more than one shot. There was one shot where I think I get thrown through a plate glass window. I'm like, they can have that one. But other than that, we tried to get all the shots that we would do those, and we did. And consequently, after a full day of putting my safety in John Barrowman's hands and having him be there, and because he is a maniac, but he is a very intelligent, responsible, capable actor. And when your physical safety is in someone's hands and they take care of you again and again, you get to trust that person very deeply. And so, yeah, I love kissing him. I kiss him again. I trust him.
Hi. I have a question for you. I'm going to need you to put on your thinking back and go back to Buffy's episode of Once More with Feeling. When Anya and Xander had their song, that was I'll Never Tell. She called it Retro Pastiche, and she said it would never be a breakaway pop hit. With your background in music, what do you feel, in your opinion, was the breakaway pop hit on that particular episode, or was there one?
There was not.
Okay. Didn't get it. Right.
No, there was not. It was Broadway style songs. I remember, like, I got my song, and I got a little tape of Joss singing the song. I was like, weird. And I didn't know how I wanted to sing it. And so I just got the sheet music and I got the chords and I started playing it on guitar, and I quickly discovered it had kind of a Nirvana chord progression. And especially the chorus, boom, 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 like that.
Right.
And I got a rhythm in my head, and I was like, this is so Nirvana, man. That's rock and roll. Okay, now I'm in the groove. And I played it for Joss. I was like, we got to do it like this. And he's like, yeah, if Nirvana did it. No. I was like, Nirvana is the best band in the world. He's like, no, we're going to get out of here. So, yeah, I mean, if it was Nirvana, it hit. If I'd have got my way, it would have been a hit. But no, we had to do it Joss Whedon's way and make it Genius instead of a Nirvana ripoff. So, it could have been Bush. Oh, well.
Thank you.
So.
I have a Torchwood question. Yeah. When you found out you got the part of John Hart, what was your reaction?
I did not know how much fun I was going to do. I didn't know that it was going to become one of my favorite experiences. Frankly, when I got the role, I thought it was another job. I mean, I was let down because I was doing a music tour through Europe, and we happened to be in London. And I'd asked the tour manager to come out to dinner with me, this woman named Lisa Power. And she said, I'm not coming out to dinner with you tonight, Doctor Who is on. And I was like, whatever. And she said, if you want to have dinner with me tonight, we're going to have room service in the room, we're going to watch Doctor Who. And I was like, oh, fine. And because I hadn't seen the reboot yet. And all I knew was the Doctor Who from my childhood, which was kind of cheesy, I can be honest about it. It was a budget thing more than an acting thing. And we start watching it, and it's amazing. It's absolutely incredible. And 15 minutes into it, I'm like, I want to be on the show. And I go down the hall to my manager, and I'm like, dude, call up Russell T. Davies, tell him I want to be on the show. Like, come on. And he comes back the next day, and I'm like, what did Russell say? He says, Russell said no. Cannot be on Doctor Who. But he's got a spin-off, and he's got a good role for you. I was like,
Spin-off of Doctor. Fine.
so I kind of went down with a chip on my shoulder. But Russell told me that Torchwood was his Buffy, that he's a Buffy fan. And that Torchwood is my Buffy, he said. And he didn't explain himself, and it took me a long time to realize what he was talking about. What I think he meant was they're both subversive shows. Like Buffy was subverting the idea that women can't defend themselves. And believe me, after fighting the stunt doubles, the women that I fought, women are just as deadly as they want to be. I fought Ming Lee, who is Bruce Lee's niece. And yeah, she could kill us all, like everyone else, real fast. So, Torchwood was subverting the idea that gay people can't be heroes. And both of the shows were right in your face about that. Just right up front. It wasn't subtle at all. And I remember getting down and just realizing what I was in the middle of, and I was like, because I was doing an interview with the BBC, and they go, so what do you think about the homophobic backlash against Torchwood? And I just went, we have a backlash? We have a backlash? We have, ah! Because I'm a punk rocker, I'm like, get it out. And I got really, really proud to be in the show. And I think we offended all the right people with both of those shows.
I think if there's any other Joss Whedon fans in the room, that we know that Joss loves nothing more than to wait until we have our favorite character and then kill them.
Yep.
So what makes you special? Because no matter what, your character was rewritten and evolved and came back again and again and switched shows and came back, and Josh just would not let you go.
That's real. That's a great Yeah, we all, the whole cast, except for Sarah, we all read the last page first because we want to know if we were on the chopping block every week. I mean, it keeps the actors really honest, to tell you the truth. Yeah, it's kind of weird because he wanted to kill me. In the beginning, he wanted to kill me off. Because in the beginning, okay, Buffy is about how do you get from childhood to adulthood. How do you go through your teenage years when you're waking up to the fact that the world is messed up and your parents don't know what they're talking about? How do you get through that without giving up on yourself or the world? And vampires are just metaphors for the challenges of adolescence. So that's why we're not supposed to be sexy when we bite someone. That's why we turn ugly when we bite someone. So he used to say, I don't like that Anne Rice stuff. I don't want people feeling for the vampires. Vampires are supposed to be triumphed over. That's it. And he got talked into one romantic vampire. That was Angel. It wasn't his idea. It was David Greenwald's. And Angel takes off like a rocket. And he tells David, that's one. You get one, and that's it. And Spike wasn't supposed to be that kind of character, but the audience was reacting that way to him. And Joss actually shoved me up against the wall one day, got right in my face. He goes, I don't care how popular you are, kid. You are dead. You are dead. You are dead. And I was like, it's your football, boss. Okay, whatever. Just pay me. Whatever, man. I don't know. They needed a new Cordelia. I know that. Like in season 4, they lost the character on Buffy that was supposed to tell Buffy, you're stupid, we're all about to die. And that was Charisma Carpenter. She went off onto the spin-off Angel, and they needed a new character to do that. And apparently he asked Sarah who she thought would be a good replacement for Cordelia, and she said, what about Spike? And he said, yeah, we'll try that. And that's why I was always coming in with a smoking blanket in the beginning, so I could get into the room to tell Buffy she was dumb. And it wasn't really working because the crew was asphyxiating every time I had to get into the room. And they realized we can't do this forever. And at that point I thought I was going to be killed off. It was just impossible to make that character do that. And then they got Anya, which was that character. And I thought, I'm on the chopping, there's nothing left. But he kept me around. And I think Spike kind of took the original theme and made Joss re-examine it from a different angle. Like he said in an interview once, I realized while doing Buffy that not all villains are all bad, which I think is a better, Joss and I both love Shakespeare, and Shakespeare wrote very few villains, almost none. There's Iago in Othello, and there's Richard III, and that's it, really. Otherwise, all across Shakespeare, there's just human beings, and some of them are hurting each other. That's it. But none of them are villains. And so I think it was interesting to him. I think it was the only reason that I was around. Yeah. Also, the hair looked nice.
What?
Okay. Well, come by my table. We'll talk there. Yes, what's up?
If you had superpowers, would you be a hero or a villain?
I would be a hero. I'm sorry. Yeah. My friends all get on me about this. When I play those I like to play video games, and whenever I play a video game that gives you choices, I always go for the good guy choice. And they're like, dude, we have to be nice in life. Like, just experiment a little. I'm like, I feel bad about it. I have to save the baby. I feel better that way. Get off me. So I'm the hero, yeah. Quickly, cheat. What's up?
Hi, James. I'm also James.
Hey, James.
I'm
Great name.
Nice. I'm an aspiring actor, too. Based on what you said, I think they didn't kill off Spike because I feel like he was like because he was the villain that became the anti-hero.
Yeah.
And you're like his foil, so you like to keep you around.
Yeah.
But I loved my youth. I served in the U.S. military, but I always wanted to be an actor. Yeah. And I just wonder, both before and after Buffy, what roles you actually decided to take, and what experience made you say, I'm not going to take this role? And any advice you have for a person my age? I'm 38 today, and
Happy birthday.
And I want to know any advice you have for a person who's still trying to go to acting.
Yeah, I don't take roles where there's sexual violence, generally. There would have to be a really good reason. I just have a bad day with that stuff. And then you don't want to be the guy, if the story is, then the lead is a woman, you don't want to be the guy that is set up that the audience does not want her with you. You know what I mean? Like the first boyfriend, and then the real guy comes along, but she's with this other guy. You don't want that role. That's about it. And just as, it's good writing, like if you read a script and you can't wait to turn the page and can't wait to find out what's going on, that's something you probably want to do. And then, I talked about it before, but it's just realize that you are, as you are right now, beautiful enough and interesting enough to be stared at. But when you do get stared at, either by a camera or the audience, there's a very honest fight-flight reflex that happens, because the only time that animals stare at each other is when they're about to eat each other. So, it's an honest voice that says run, but you have to overcome that, and instead of running away or fighting the audience, you have to reveal yourself as you really are in a vulnerable way. And it's a very simple thing, but it's a very difficult thing, and it's a little hill that I have to climb every time they say action or a curtain going up. And with that, I gotta go. Guys, you've been fabulous.